Bill Christie, welcome to Business Spotlight Interviews.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Very much appreciated.
Well, thank you for coming on to share your story. I'm really excited to hear about your experience. Can we start off just by you sharing a little bit about what you do and how long you've been doing it?
Well, my career started off a long time ago when I joined a high street bank, the Royal Bank of Scotland. I was there for 25 years. I was spent 7 years in London working with the bank, and came back north. Then latterly, I was in the old Gordon Street office in Glasgow for the Royal Bank. I was in charge of the advances section. And in the 80s, I must have had the knack for, I don't know, I suppose being an actual people person to attract business. So they asked me to set up what was then the first business development unit that any Scottish bank had. So it just took off. And then I said, look, this shouldn't be Gordon Street office. This should be all of Scotland. Let's just say that didn't work out. I was told I was like empire building, but fortunately, I was then headhunted by the then James Finlay Merchant Bank to develop the activities of 6 companies within the banking group. And that lasted 7 years. Then in came a new chairman to James Finlay PLC, and he then decided to sell off all the constituent companies. So I reckon I must have done a good job because they were all sold off or management buyouts. So that meant well, what was I going to be doing? So I thought, right, I don't want to go back into banking because banking has changed. And I thought maybe I'm too old. So I thought no. So in those days when you left banking, nobody had left banking. So, but I did. Nowadays, everyone's got on their CV about 4 or 5 different banks. So, right, I want to go out and help people and use all those years of experience by listening to what they want. Maybe then give them what they need. And I use that expression a lot. And from then on, because of my connections, and also through Rotary as well, I'm a past president of the Rotary Club of Glasgow. I'm now the founder president of the E-Club of the West of Scotland. So I've got the trusted professionals, people I trust. So it's not being on your own. You can recognize situations. I recognize about R&D or capital allowances. I don't do them. I bring in the experts. So working as a team, and that's what it's all about. Working with a team. So I always say together we can help your clients.
Sure.
And it's great.
So you've had a lot of years in the corporate field. Now you own your own business. What has been your biggest learning since you've become a business owner?
To be patient, and you no longer get a check coming in every month. You've got to learn that it's a changed market out there. You've also got to learn as well that you've got to, when you're presenting something to the lenders, whether they be the high street banks or the alternative funders, invoice finance, asset finance, anybody else, you've got to get the right information. And before you can put it forward, you've got to ask the right questions as well. And sometimes some cases cannot go ahead because there's not a structure there. People haven't thought about it correctly. They should maybe be a limited company. As I say, before you make up your mind, speak to your accountant. Then you can decide which way to go. We don't just jump into it. So they bought property in their own name, and it shouldn't be that way. It's in the wife's name. It should maybe be a limited company. So getting the right structure, working with the appropriate accountants, and also knowing the appropriate lawyers and other specialists. As I say, in invoice finance, asset finance, capital allowances, and yes, it's important to know who that you can work with. And I'm very pleased to say that Glasgow's only a village, and I've got all the right connections.
So you talk a lot about having a strong external team to support you and to support
Yeah.
your customers, your clients. So what are the qualities that you look for in good strategic partners because you're putting your reputation on the line by introducing external It's hard.
Yes, and sometimes I have made a mistake through not recognizing things that maybe I should have. Other people did that I didn't, so you get caught out. But
Yeah.
hey, that's life. But no, it's keeping in contact with them, keeping up to date with how what's happening in the marketplace, what the banks are doing or not doing, what the alternative funders are doing. Having people at the banks that I can lift the phone to, which is unusual nowadays because people having to wait a long time. But when you have the reputation, the banks know that I'm not going to waste their time.
Sure.
Similarly, the legal professions, if I put something to them, I'll give them a thumbnail sketch. Same with accountants, I'll give them a thumbnail, maybe a bit more than that information. So when we have the meeting with them, they've got a pretty good idea. And I can always say, my understanding is that. Put an A4 paper to the accountant, have the meeting and say, yeah, Bill's got it right, but I'm not qualified as an accountant to say this is it.
Yeah.
So you have to watch what you're doing, but a little knowledge can be dangerous, but if you know the right questions to ask, it's important.
100%. And since you made the leap from the corporate world to business owner, what would you say have been the biggest issues you've had to overcome?
Starting up, the first thing. How do you start up? At that time, nobody was doing this. So how do you start up? How do you get known? And how do you get respected for what you're doing? Because yes, people knew me as Bill Christie, the Royal Bank of Scotland. So you had to break that because I didn't want to be known as the banker. And that was it. That was important. I didn't want to be known as, and no disrespect, because a lot of companies, yes, like the insurance industry, they'll get called brokers. The broking industry has changed dramatically, but particularly because of the FCA regulations. But previously, people would just say, oh, it's a property, and they would take you to any old lender for the highest commission. Sure. So you've got to be honest with people. You've got to do what's best for them. And I want people to trust me as I trust them. And very often you have to say no to them for the right reasons. But if you're honest with them, they will come back to you.
So you've really had to rebuild your brand. You changed your brand. So now you needed to let the wider community know who you are now.
Well, that's happened, but I said, it's like everything else, it's changing. People are changing. LinkedIn, I've had people on LinkedIn contact me. I don't know who they are. LinkedIn as well. You get so many requests. You only connect with a few or you respond to a few. You have to use it correctly. Yeah. I'm an ambassador for your partnerships, which is a networking group initially based down in Cornwall and Devon, but it's now formed into an actual collaboration with about 12 other networking groups. So you can't go to them all, but you identify the ones that you can relate to, where you can attend and build up trust. Guess what? You get referrals because they trust you, and I won't abuse that.
100%. So just tell me a little bit so you mentioned the networking. I'm curious to know, this isn't part of our spotlight interview questions, but I'm just genuinely curious. So you've got you had a link on your LinkedIn page to a digital business card and a QR code, and you've got that QR code on your screen now. Can you just tell me a little bit about what this is?
Well, it's a good. I had a QR code many years ago, and I'm waiting for my new website to be done because the one that's up just now is a little bit embarrassing, but that'll soon be rectified. It was a temporary affair, but when you're talking even on Zoom, and there's more and more done on Zoom, you might not get the chance to speak to somebody in a breakout room. You could put something into the chat, but I always put in the chat the link to the QR code, or say scan it, as I said on there, scan my digital business card, because that isn't about selling, it's about giving information. There's one article on that, a business funding now and in the future. It's about 6 pages of advice and guidance, not about me, but what goes out to the public. And people need to know those things. They need to follow the correct paths. If they're a startup loan, who do they go to? It names certain people. If they're looking for investment, should they go to an accountant and register with them for the EIS? So it's a lot of things that I want people to actually start thinking about their business and I want them to think about, right, if we're getting this up here, who do we go to? And
So,
I'm here to help.
so on a traditional business card, you have like I've got my business cards next to me. It's got my name and my address and phone number. And on your digital business card, you do have some background around you because obviously you need to establish credibility. But you've got videos on here. You've got PDFs to download that essentially are answering questions about
Yes.
funding and these kinds. You're giving value before anybody even has to make the decision whether or not they want to get in touch with you.
Yes, and I've also got my QR code on my paper or card or paper business
Yeah.
card as well, because I think it's the way ahead. If I met somebody yesterday, and he had the one where you just a different one altogether. Something you get a wee card, touch it on their phone, and hey presto, it goes. But with the meeting we had yesterday for a gentleman who's on entrepreneur, today I'm giving him about 6 referrals of people in the corporate market I think could be of useful use to him.
Sure.
Um, and it was a great conversation. So it's not all about me. It's not all about him. It's about we.
Well, I mean, I think it's a great idea, and I think people are going to watch this video are going to look again at QR codes and digital business cards and general branding. Like how are we being seen in the marketplace, and how many different ways can we be seen?
Mhm. A lot of what I do is not about all about funding. I've been helping some young people with the wording that they do for like Scottish Edge. I've been helping them with the wording. I may not be technical enough to understand what they're doing, but when I get it, they'll get a reply from me. Enough lot of it will have read on it to say, look, this is not the way to go. And I'm delighted to say they've been telling other people that if it hadn't been for Bill Christie, we wouldn't have got the grant. So helping people that I recognise it's different. And I've got one gentleman, a Hong Kong Chinese lad, that had harnessed a way to patented a way to harness tidal energy. Now I've become quite involved in that. There's no company involved yet. There's no money involved in it, but working with other people who are in the right sector. We're working with, hoping to work with some universities. So it's great what you learn, what you can retain, and what you can give advice and guidance on.
100%. You've definitely got the experience and the track record to give that
I like to
advice.
think so, yes.
Yeah.
And it means I've had a lady on the phone this morning. She wanted to set up an enterprise company. I said, look, go away and think about it. This might not be the vehicle for it. So they're back from Kenya and spoke this morning. Bill, you were right. I said, well, I could only give you the information. You had to decide that for yourself. So we're meeting up shortly to look at another avenue. So.
Fantastic. So, look, just going back then to making the leap from corporate to business owner, how have you found a challenge in terms of balancing your personal life with the demands of running your own business and managing the teams, managing the customers? Or are you able to?
I'm able. I think you've got to be careful. I think you've got to make time for yourself. You've got to make time for administration. And when you're like working with the merchant bank or the Royal Bank, being in a senior position, you didn't get overtime. You could work all hours and get no actual thanks for it. But you enjoyed it. You enjoyed helping. So it wasn't easy to make that first move. But again, I had no option with the second move, but I made a decision and I've got absolutely no regret because I couldn't be doing what I'm doing now if I hadn't had the 7 years with the merchant bank. And yeah, and all can I say, getting rid of the hat of the banker. Yeah, I mean, in 2010, I was amazed and delighted and honoured to be awarded a fellowship of the Chartered Banker Institute. So that's a long time after I had come out of banking. So I think it's important, and it's something I've shown on my business card because, yeah, I'm proud to say I'm a chartered banker, and because I still look at the how can I put the actual core responsibilities that banking gave me, which perhaps we haven't got nowadays. And also being a member of Rotary Club for over 30 years, there are many instances where I will bring the actual caring aspect of my of life into what you're doing. And
Yeah.
I've had people from I've met and speakers at Zoom groups and in face to face. I've had them on our e-club as guest speakers because I think they've got something to offer to the community. Because we may have small numbers on Zoom, but we put them out on YouTube, so it's spreading the word to help charities and other businesses. So something I've done all my life with Roundtable and Rotary. So it's all part of being in the community.
I've got one final question then. I want to make a note here about that because that's a really good point. Um, what what would be the best advice you would give to somebody who's thinking of going into business for themselves? Somebody who is maybe in your position back then in the corporate world who wants to make that leap. What would be the best advice you would give them?
Take advice. People jump. Take advice, and before you jump, take advice. Speak to people who, like myself, who have made it. Others who are a lot younger than me who have done it as well. Who can they link up with? What can they do? Because even going into forming an actual broking firm with people, it's all the rules and regulations. For example, nowadays we've got the accountants. There are accountants and there are accountants. Anyone can call themselves an accountant, I'm afraid. But you've got to make sure that you're in the right professional hands. And I've even had this in the legal profession. I hate to say, but someone recently, a situation where they had a parcel of land next to their home. Now, I said, I can't do this, but because I'll have to put it onto somebody else. But you have to get your lawyer. The parcel of land that you want to develop should be a separate title. Oh no, my lawyer said I haven't got to do that. I said, well, I'm sorry, speak to your lawyer again. I'm not a lawyer, but
Yeah.
so you can give advice and guidance to people setting up in business. Make sure of the structure. Get a good accountant. And not all of a lot of accountants are more than delighted to help, but know the marketplace, know about the startup loans, think about other features, think about trade finance, and don't be tunnel visioned. Ask. If you don't ask, you won't get advice and guidance.
I guess, to become a business owner, it takes a certain amount of confidence and arguably a certain amount of ego. And I guess those are really important qualities to have, but it could stop you from wanting to get advice and think you
I,
know everything
yeah,
yourself.
I wouldn't say ego. I would say confidence. I think wanting to help. I mean, as a youngster, I had a very bad stammer. So when I started off earlier on, even in the roundtable days, and yeah, but I think confidence can overcome that. But I think it's the confidence and the enthusiasm. If you can smile on screen. People say that to me, and from different parts of the world when I'm on a Zoom call. Bill, you've got a great smile, but it's not false. It's just the way I am. You're doing it as well, and you've got a pleasant smile on your face, and
Oh,
that
stop it, Bill. Come on.
no. But I mean, but if you're talking to somebody, it's not a false way.
Yeah.
You are who you are, and I think that's important.
Massively important and great advice all around. And people who watch this video are definitely going to be taking some top pointers away from this and maybe even looking at their business differently moving forward. So thank you very much for sharing your experiences with us,
Yeah.
Bill. We really
One
appreciate it.
last word, I would say I'd love to speak to business owners about what they want and then show them what they need.
And everybody who watches this video is going to get that QR code and that link, and they'll be getting in touch with you. So, Bill, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Much appreciated.